I have points here, but it feels kind of moot after all of the energy and comments that have been made today. There's no way I can sit here and just read from these pages without being influenced by the amazing students that have spoken before me, leaders who have spoken before me, and all of the energy that you've put in this space. So bear with me as I change all of this. I have some pictures as well to go through this story with me, but I really just have to say I'm so humbled and honored to be the honoree this evening. It's not my first gala. When I was a student, I was here. I've been Chloe before. I've been Darnell. And so it is so amazing to be here in this position. So just have to recognize that. My speech that I wrote here, my talking points, really talk about opening doors and the theme tonight of empowering people. So I'll start here with some pictures. I want to take you on the journey of the doors that were opened for me and the doors that I aspire to open for those behind me. This is who I am. I am the youngest of three, the daughter of a single mother, raised in Manhattanville Projects, about 10 minutes from HEAF's offices. But what I wanted to talk and what changed and what I heard today is that story of empowerment and the people who empowered me to open those doors or opened doors for me. My mother was a staunch advocate for education. She's that woman in the red there behind me. She knew what education could do and what spaces it would take me to. So very early on in my education, she decided the district schools and where we lived weren't good enough. We needed to find a way to get you into better schools in Manhattan. And she made sure that I went to one of the #1 schools in Manhattan at a very early age when she could open those doors. And there I actually started to play chess. So very early on in my life, I was a competitive chess player, which is really interesting and hilarious for me to say now. I haven't touched a chess piece in quite some time, but I was on a travel chess team. And you'll see here, this is actually on the 10th floor in a space that was shared with HEAF, with Maurice Ashley. I was about in the 3rd or 4th grade at this point, and I got to join the Harlem Knights. My mother saw the power of analytical thinking in chess, saw the power of what that could do for me and how that could open doors as a problem solver, as somebody who knew how to take on challenges and build resilience. As a travel chess player at 10 years old, as a little black girl who showed up at these competitions at 10 years old, there was quite a lot of adversity in there. People counted me out before I even sat down at tables. But I had a room like this behind me. I had these leaders teaching me how to strategize, teaching me what to do next, opening those doors for me. So then naturally, when it came time, when I reached the 6th grade, I joined HEAF. Again, lots of photos to take you on this journey with me. In the 6th grade, I matriculated into our traditional programming, but I didn't do it normally. Again, my mother was empowered to make sure I got the most out of every experience. So in my 6th grade, I actually skipped Summer Quest. And I did Summer Institute for the Gifted as a New York Life Scholar. I got the chance to travel to Vassar to spend my summer taking college-level classes as a 6th grader. This isn't that picture, but it's one of those. There are so many opportunities that HEAF provided me when I think about what that door opened. I got to be on a liberal arts college campus at 11, at 12. In spaces with people who had no idea what public housing was, people whose parents paid for them to be in these experiences, and I was here off the strength of HEAF and the doors that were opened to me. When I think about that and the experiences, there are so many of them. Again, I talked to Chloe this evening, and I asked, what does she do for fun? She said her time is pretty much taken up by HEAF. I was like, I feel you. That was me. Every program available. So this picture here is actually in the 10th grade on an LSI trip. So just like Darnell, I spent my summers at HEAF doing programs, doing our service learning initiatives. On this one, it was called Get on the Bus. We got on a bus and we drove across the United States talking about educational advocacy. This is us on one of our downtimes, but the rest of our time was spent learning about policy, speaking in front of leaders, getting comfortable advocating for ourselves as young students of color and what we needed in the educational system. I didn't just get to do the domestic ones, I also got to travel abroad. I got to go to Senegal. Can you imagine? My first time getting a passport, my first stamp is to go to Senegal. Amazing experiences. And when I think about that, I can't help but get emotional. The experiences that HEAF has allowed me, the doors that have been opened for me, are uncomparable to my peers in any space, except for the ones who are in this with me, right? In this picture is my brother. In this picture is one of my best friends who is actually supposed to officiate my wedding. In this picture are people who have grown with me and supported me from almost 4th grade to where I stand for you, in front of you today. I also had the opportunity to go to Brazil and to learn about the diaspora in such a different way. There's no way I could have known what it means to be a part of the African American diaspora without traveling to Rio de Janeiro, without traveling to Sao Paulo to really see the culture firsthand. But it wasn't just about the travel. They took us to Brazilian restaurants here in Manhattan. They made us eat the food. They made us do capoeira here on the 10th floor of HEAF. After school, I remember having to change into clothes to get into capoeira mode, to understand and learn about the cultures we were going to experience. Those are experiences that opened not just the physical doors of where I went, but so many doors in my mind of what was possible. There were no limitations on what this small Black girl could do and what I could achieve. And I hope, and I sit here looking at the students here, and I hope that you know that there are no limits to what you can achieve. I want to go to the next one, our next picture, and skip forward a little bit. One thing about my announcement is I went to Howard, heard that in my bio, but in my junior year, our college trip, we got on another bus, there's a clear theme here, and we went down south. We visited every top university between New York and Atlanta. This is a picture of the women of my year in front of Spelman. I have no experience with HBCUs before attending one. This was my first introduction to what a historically Black college could offer. I remember walking the halls, walking the campus, and just being in awe of how many women of color, people of color, were just about something. We're all working towards the same goal. The only place I had something like that was at HEAF. When I looked around my Harlem life, there were so many people that weren't working towards that goal or that aspiration of really creating something for themselves, achieving success, creating an opportunity to thrive. And at an HBCU, I saw that in a new and different way. So what's not pictured here was one of our first stops was Howard. And I just remember being in awe of the campus, of how I saw people enjoying themselves in a free way that I had never seen before. And I really look back at this experience as something that opened my eyes and opened the door of what an HBCU could offer me. I got into other schools. It wasn't about where I could go, it was about where I could show up as myself and really grow into the person I needed to be. So fast forward here to my graduation. And when I can say this because I know we have some family in the room, HBCUs are not easy to graduate from. There are a lot of barriers to matriculating successfully through an HBCU, whether it be financial, whether it be housing, whether it be all the things that we normally only talk about in family company. But I wouldn't have been able to do that without one of our advisors at HEAF who was a Howard alum. When I first got accepted, I had no idea where I was going to stay. She said, "Don't worry. When I went 20 years before you, I also didn't know." Not that that should be the standard, but I had someone who knew exactly what I was going through. I had someone who had been the first to attend an HBCU in her family. I had someone who was willing to help me through that process at HEAF. I didn't have to go anywhere to find that because they were there and accessible to me. And nowhere else could I have gotten that. So when I look at this picture, it is a reflection of those who supported me through this journey and made it possible. So when I graduated from Howard, I actually worked at Marsh & McLennan. That was my first job. I know Marsh is here as a sponsor. This is some time ago. And in that job, I made more money than my mother ever made. I had to stop and think about that when I got my first paycheck, or when I got my offer letter even. This is more money than my mother has ever seen on a piece of paper. That was mind-blowing for me. At the age of 22, I had already achieved more economically than my mother was ever able to achieve. That kind of broke my brain for a while. But it's always been in the back of my brain and understanding the challenges and the hurdles that exist for women of color as we try to achieve economic independence, as we try to achieve economic equality. But what I always had was the inquisitiveness, the drive to ask the questions. And what I wanted to know was, when I got into my rotation, why weren't there more of me? When it got time for promotions, why weren't we advancing at the same rates? These were all questions that I had, but I didn't know where to place them. And so I started to ask around. Again, a lot of my HEAF alumni community was a part of this, where I went to ask these questions. The leaders of HEAF were the people who could give me some guidance on this. But ultimately, they came back to me with questions, no solutions. And said, "Well, why do you think that's so? What are you going to do about it? What can you do about it?" So I ended up applying to business school because I wanted to talk about diversity and understand diversity, but from a business person's perspective. I wanted to be able to explain diversity to a CEO, to a CFO. So that led me to applying to business school and being one of the few people who was loud and proud in my essays that diversity matters and that I need an MBA to tell a CEO why it matters. That ended up resulting me in a full ride to Georgetown through the Consortium of Graduate Study and Management. Another door that was opened because people were there who asked the right questions of me and helped me guide myself to the right questions. This is so funny that I chose this picture because at this conference, in this picture, I met my current boss. He actually gave me my first role in DEI. Then he was a chief diversity officer at a small company, but now he's the chief diversity officer at Ford. And in my career, he's been there as a mentor and advisor through this whole time, and now I work as his chief of staff. When we think about doors and how the connections are made, I would never have been in that room to ask the questions, to have the conversation, if I weren't that small little black girl with the weird pigtails on the 10th floor playing chess. It all goes back. And I have to say this, I take a deep sigh, but DEI is under attack. It is a challenging time to be in this field. I can't say that I work at Ford Motor Company without addressing the headlines or without addressing the controversies that are happening, the assumptions that are being made around what's happening in this space. But all I can say is that my job is here, and I have a leader who is pushing the line, who is putting our organization in a position to be a leader in this space and really drive change. Michael said something earlier that really stuck with me around pushing and driving for change to empower people to change in this space. I have a leader that has done that in such meaningful ways. That's why I'm at Ford. I wouldn't be at a large OEM. I am a social justice warrior at heart, and that does not sound like Ford. But what I've been provided with is a leader who's willing to ask the right questions, to challenge the right people, and has a business mindset on why DEI matters and why it needs to matter to our CEO, our CFO, COO, our whole organization. And by doing that, we're addressing the bottom line. We're showing how my presence, how his presence, how having more diversity in our leadership, having diversity in our plants drives our bottom line, drives safety, drives impact, drives innovation. We're building those business cases every single day. And so that's my response. I don't have to address a headline. I can show the work that we do and show up for my boss, show up for our team. And that's really what DEI is and how it matters to our organization. So I knew I had to address it. But what I want to say truly is that I am only here because of doors that were opened for me and doors that were kicked in front of me. And I hope to do that for the students here today. There's one thing. And I'll end on this note. I talked about what HEAF has done for me, but I have given back to HEAF in so many ways. It is about how I take the time to continue to open those doors. I hosted students when they did their next college tour at Howard. I worked there when I was a freshman in college. I am here today speaking and advocating for your students here and HEAF as an organization. So just as doors were open for me, I am going to kick down as many doors as I can possibly for all of you students. And with that, I thank you.